6월 25일 기사입니다. Korean War Anniversary. The path to Koreas have taken since war. Thursday marks the 70th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War. Now military tension is still palpable on the Korean peninsula 7 decades on. Last week, Pyongyang demolished a liaison office that stood as a symbol of improved inter-Korean ties, worrying many here that several years of progress toward that detente could, could so quickly be undone. While a big question mark hangs over the direction to the two Koreas are heading now, one thing history shows is that relations between the two have had their ups and downs, swinging between armed clashes and steps toward rapprochement. Inter-Korean relations is a continuation of advancement, retreat, achievement, and setback, said Lim Dong-won, a former director of National Intelligence and Unification Minister during the Kim Dae-jung administration. Here is a brief overview of events that have shaped the dynamic of inter-Korean relations between the war up until today. Enemy states 1953 to 1969. The brutal war, which killed more than 3 million people, came to a halt in 1953 when the Armistice Agreement was signed, but it was never replaced with a formal peace treaty. The years after the war were marked by deep tensions and enmity between the South and the North. The two Koreas were vying for legitimacy and international recognition. Tensions on the peninsula escalated in the late 1960s, with both sides attempting infiltration of one another and plotting coups. A series of military clashes took place from 1966 through 1969, largely between North Korean and South Korean forces or between the North and US troops in the demilitarized zone. It was during this time, in 1968, that the North sent 31 commandos to sneak into Cheongwade in a failed attempt to assassinate President Park Jong-hee. That same year, the North also seized U.S. spy ship, the USS Pluto, and held 83 American crew members hostage for months, seesawing between detente and confrontation. 1970 to 1987, the thaw in the Cold War between the US and Soviet Union brought the mood of dialogue to the Korean Peninsula. In August 1971, the first Red Cross talks took place with delegates from both sides meeting in Pyongyang to discuss humanitarian issues and reunions of separated families. The following year, after secret dialogue between the South Korean intelligence chief and North Korean leader Kim Il-sung, the two Koreas issued their first joint statement, the July 4th South-North Joint Communique. They agreed that reunification should be negotiated peacefully and without foreign interference. Under the agreement, the two Koreas established their first hotline. But the 1980s were a dark decade, with Pyongyang detonating a bomb in Myanmar in 1983 aimed at top visiting South officials, killing 21 people. South Korean President Chun Doo-hwan narrowly escaped. In 1987, another bombing killed all 115 passengers on Korean Air Flight 858. Pyongyang officially denied involvement in their attack. Progress toward peace. 1988 to 1997. After Seoul hosted the Summer Olympics in 1988, the South pushed to broaden its diplomatic frontier, normalizing relations with China, the former Soviet Union, and Eastern European bloc countries. As part of this policy, President Roh Tae-woo also reached out to North Korea, and after many rounds of dialogue, the two sides signed a non-aggression pact vowing freer trade and cultural exchanges. The two Koreas also joined the United Nations in 1991. In 1992, the two Koreas agreed not to test, possess, produce, or use nuclear weapons and to renounce uranium enrichment and plutonium reprocessing. The agreement did not last long as North Korea threatened to go nuclear, pushing the peninsula to the brink of war. But the nuclear crisis was diffused when former US President Jimmy Carter visited Pyongyang and brokered what could have been the first ever summit between the two Koreas since the war ended. In a dramatic turn of events, Kim Il-sung died in July 1994, 2 weeks before the summit was to take place, and his son Kim Jong-il took the helm of the regime. Later that year, North Korea signed a major nuclear deal, agreeing to dismantle its nuclear facilities. Over the next several years, inter-Korean relations turned vol- volatile, with issues including food aid and a North Korean submarine infiltration incident in 1996. Sunshine Era 1998 to 2007. Kim Dae-jung, who became president of South Korea in 1998, introduced the Sunshine Policy of engaging North Korea with massive shipments of aid, investment, and trade to encourage the reclusive regime to open up. In 2000, the first ever inter-Korean summit took place between Kim Dae-jung and the North Kim Jong-il in Pyongyang. The highly anticipated meeting culminated in the adoption of the June 15 South-North Joint Declaration, in which both sides pledged to work together for peace and unification. Later that year, Kim Dae-jung won the Nobel Peace Prize, a first for the country. The Sunshine Policy continued despite the two Koreas facing off in naval clashes in the West Sea in June 2002. Meanwhile, the U.S. took a hardline stance in North Korea, with U.S. President George Washington Bush calling the north part of an axis of evil. The following year, the North withdrew from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Despite the North expanding its nuclear weapons program, the South stuck to the engagement policy under Liberal President Roh Moo-hyun. The first round of six-party talks involving China, the US, the two Koreas, Japan, and Russia aimed at ending the North's nuclear program through negotiations was convened in 2003. In 2006, the North conducted its first nuclear weapons test, leading the UN to impose sanctions against it. With international sentiment toward Pyongyang worsening, Seoul felt the need for an inter-Korean summit. The following year, Roh went to Pyongyang for the second inter-Korean summit, and in a joint statement, both sides vowed mutual efforts to resolve the nuclear issue on the Korean Peninsula.